Welcome to Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. I'm Kevin Parkerson.
And I'm Kevin Higgins. Together we bring you over 60 years in combined experience in global logistics.
In each episode, we'll dive into the latest industry trends, share practical tips, celebrate wins, and share stories from the logistics front lines, all while helping businesses optimize their logistics operations. Welcome back to Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. I'm Kevin Parkerson, joined as always by my co-host, Kevin Higgins. And today we're doubling down on the Kevins.
That's right, KP. We've got another Kevin joining us, Kevin Speers, the brains behind Splice, a company that's transforming logistics through innovation and connection. It's a Kevin trifecta today.
I love that. Grab your coffee, whatever your favorite beverage is, settle in for a really good conversation about collaboration, tech, and the human side of supply chain success.
That's right. Let's get to it. Welcome, Kevin Speers. Hey Kevin
guys.
Speers.
Great to be here. Great to be back.
Welcome back. The audience likely will remember you from our one of our best episodes, Kevin Palooza.
Exactly.
Where we had a number of Kevins in the supply chain. You were one of those. It was a short episode that we were able to only get just a little bit from each person, each Kevin. So we're really excited about bringing you back, giving you a little bit more than about 2 or 3 minutes to talk about yourself and what you've done. You've got a great 20-plus career. 20 years in the industry. I'd love to hear, give the audience just a little bit of flavor of who you are, what you've done, what you're doing today, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, what's happening?
Yeah, well, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Splice. And Splice is a data integration platform designed for container logistics and supply chain. So I've been here for about 3 years, and we started the company as we started thinking about, how do we bridge data gaps? There's so much manual intervention to solve problems in logistics. And I got some of that insight from working at CMA CGM, at Maersk. I would say particularly at Maersk, I spent time with them up in the DC area. I was head of marketing communications and did some government relations and did a whole bunch of different special projects that we maybe will talk about some of those as we go through, because some of them were pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. It was the U.S. flag side of Maersk. So we were doing a lot of work for the Department of Defense and even some food aid. We got into a lot of different situations, including the Maersk, Alabama. And
I was just about to ask.
A lot happening at that time. And it was a fascinating job. It was a great job. I got there from being a consultant. So I worked for a firm that's now part of Oliver Wyman, which is a global consultancy. And I started the supply chain and transportation practice there. And Maersk Line Limited was my first client. We helped them with a lot of different market studies, if that was competitive analysis, looking for potential M&A acquisitions, we looked at different growth opportunities for them. And that's really what that company did. We, as a consultancy, we always kind of looking over the horizon to what's coming next for a business, be it technology or just kind of top line growth. And I got my start in finance actually. Started my career at Procter and Gamble after going to. I went to Miami, Ohio, which is just down the road from Cincinnati. So
that's awesome. So what years were you at P&G?
It was 96 to 99.
Okay. So Mick, what was the guy's name? I did some work with those guys when I was at Walmart. We collaborated on a couple of procurement ideas, and I went up. Actually, got to go up to one of their carrier meetings when I was at Walmart. I can't remember. He's since passed away, and I can't remember his name. Mick somebody. I'll think of it anyway.
Well, I started my career in diapers.
Oh, nice. Oh, literally.
Literally, yeah. I was a cost analyst for Pampers and Loves, and I can still remember the formula card for all the different products that go into a diaper.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was, of course, I mean, Procter & Gamble, it's a fantastic company. It was a great place to start.
That's huge. That's awesome.
So Kevin, what inspired you to launch Splice? You know, and what are some of the industry challenges that now by having Splice that they help solve?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, when I was a consultant, we worked on a bunch of different projects. One was really notable to me. We with the U.S. Transportation Command, put tracking devices on containers going into Afghanistan to be able to know exactly where they were, what was happening to them. And, you know, it was a very novel approach. And we're lucky to have a partner that was willing to sacrifice a lot of their devices, because many of them didn't come back, which was part of the problem. It was kind of a one-way street. And they were pretty big. They were maybe the size of a large cornflakes box, right?
Oh, wow.
And that didn't look good to the men on the front line who were allowing containers inside their operating bases. They were problematic in many ways, but it was you know, an advancement in visibility and tracking, and it started telling me what the potential was. But at, you know, carriers and talking to forwarders and other parties around the industry, you know, technology was jumping forward, but they had systems that couldn't keep up. So you had this gap between the legacy of what they were working with and the future of what the potential could be. And that's kind of where Splice fit in, is to be able to fill those gaps and bridge legacy systems, which have long lives in organizations for good reasons. Yeah. And with the new technology that's continuously evolving, there's always going to be this gap. There's always going to be space that needs to be filled in order to get the current and the past to work together. And that's really foundation of Splice, splicing those two worlds together to create interoperability between systems, so they really end up acting like one, rather than, you know, a hodgepodge of systems where you have to upload and download data and throw it onto a spreadsheet to make the world work.
I really like the word you used, gap, and it's called Splice. And, you know, I think of connection. What does that mean to Splice, and how is that principle integrated into the capabilities of the platform?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, we use that word a lot.
Yeah,
connecting, if it's connecting through integration, but it's also, we think of it as kind of a philosophy, right? So we're trying to connect people, connect systems, connect data. And the people part, you know, we have a little slogan of, you know, connect it together, right? And that's an active, proactive way of talking about integration. But in the end, we're trying to connect the world. As you know, we're in an amazing industry that really it's multinational, maybe the most international businesses. So connecting is important, and you know, what we hope we do is really make a lot of people's lives better. If you're day to day, you're not, you know, handling data all the time, but you're working with your customer. That's really the outcome we're looking for.
So what would you, for the audience, give them a really good assessment of your core offerings? What the platform, what is it?
Yeah. The platform itself, think of it as like a Rosetta Stone. It's a universal translator of different data languages, formats, and protocols. So we live in a very diverse industry, There's a lot of different ways that data is generated and moved and what it looks like. So we're trying to make all those languages, speak together, have a common language so that data moves from place to place a little bit more seamlessly. So the foundation is this integration platform. And then we've used that platform to create what we call some point solutions. So focusing in on specific problems where an integration-centric approach can solve them uniquely.
Yep.
So one of them is what we call Splice exports. So this Splice exports collects export receiving dates, so your earliest receiving date, your cutoff dates across North America to allow exporters to know when they need to get that box to the rail ramp or to the marine terminal, get it there on time, get it moving, scheduling it well, avoiding all those ugly costs of extra storage or detention and demurrage, dry runs, all these things that just pile up cost. So that's a good example of how we use the platform industry-wide to really kind of channel information to where it becomes actionable.
So, Kevin, do you have to, because, we've all done this before, but are you able to collect that information without, the exporter writing a letter and you sending it off to all of the ocean carriers and everything else? Can you onboard pretty quickly when somebody wants to use your service?
Kevin, you've done this before.
A time or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are not in the base system. We are not collecting proprietary information about a booking.
Right.
But we are. So onboarding then becomes instantaneous. So you can sign up for Splice exports right now and start using it. So that makes it a lot easier to get going and start using it. Yeah, exactly.
Is that it? I'm sure that's through a series of APIs and other things like that you've got set up with carriers and terminals.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. In order to get this information, there isn't a standard for it. There are different ways that terminals and carriers are publishing that data. So we're bringing that in through leveraging the Rosetta Stone to translate it and normalize it so it becomes more useful.
Right.
Yeah. You said the right word, translate. So are you seeing more companies moving toward, this type of, let's call it a universal translator? Are you seeing companies move toward that approach?
I think in general, you're seeing a lot more companies look towards interoperability to drive their process efficiency. So we think of efficiency in, simplest terms as using, fewer resources to get the same thing done.
Sure.
And companies are looking at their technology stack in that way. Which ones can they replace? Which ones do they need to replace and not? I see a lot of people changing out their TMSs recently, right? Because they're looking for tools that are going to work better together. Frankly, some of the legacy TMSs are pretty tough.
Yeah.
So even some of the current ones are pretty tough to use. In order to get systems working together, you need something in the middle. We're working with a trucking company here in Virginia. So they have a transload facility in a warehouse. They have their yard, and they have, of course, the trucking side of their business. All of these things need different tools. And so we're sitting there in the middle to make them move because, he's doing a lot of different work in the company. So I'm thinking because the owner, but they have some forestry products on the export side. Of course, they have a lot of imports coming in through the Port of Virginia. All these things require something a little bit different. No business is the same, but they want to be able to use certain tools in the combination that fits them, fits their operation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, automation and what you just described can be a pretty big step for a lot of companies. What does Splice do to help your clients feel comfortable, with that type of transition.
Yeah, I like to think we have just awesome customer service, right? Because despite all the tools that we might have in place and at hand, and that actually makes the whole process go faster. There has to be conversations about, what are your objectives, what's your timeline, and get that project plan in place. There's still a lot of data mapping that has to take place in order to get one system working with the other. So that becomes a big part of it. Understanding the industry, and I'm really fortunate to have two partners who are software engineers who've been in logistics for 20 years themselves. So if you want to talk shop, they can talk tech and they can talk logistics. And it's pretty fascinating. It's very fortunate.
That's a great combo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know that looking at it from an integration centric approach, but I see on the poster behind you, and so I just have to ask about the low code side of things, and how that applies, because that's kind of no code, low code is kind of new the past few years. So can you just 60 seconds on that piece?
Sure. So we've designed some tooling internally that allows us to move much faster in building integrations, and it is a low code and very visual platform where we build in nodes to different systems and applications, and we have over 100 pre-built in the system. If that's rails and terminals, if it's TMS systems or GPS tracking devices, we already have those integrations built, and then it allows us to tie them together very quickly and often at minimal cost to our, or sometimes even no cost to our customers, so that the integration connections come together quickly. So that's how we use that low code environment to drive better results for our customers.
Yeah, thanks. Because I could nerd out on that. We could talk about that a long time, but I won't bore everybody, because I'll just get nerdy on it.
Well, it's definitely where things are going, right? Yeah. So, low code, no code, the insertion of AI into that process.
100%.
These things all work together to create an environment that I think is the one that we're looking at for the future, where logistics professionals, the young ones, and the maybe don't even need to be that young, but we're very analytical profession. We love data, and in order to be good with the data now, you have to understand where it's coming from and how to manipulate it and how to bring systems together. So it's not just an IT function anymore. It's part of understanding really supply chain, right? So you got to know the product, the money, and the data, right? Yeah. And those are the three fundamental things to make supply chain work. And people are really drilling down into the data, and there are the tools like low code that make it much more accessible to people.
Yeah. And it's not just about the translation anymore. Back in the day, we'd have EDI translators, right? You'd have the Sterlings of the world, which would take it in and spit it out, but they didn't know what to do. They didn't do anything with the data other than translate it from, this to an 856 or whatever the case may be. But now with technology, like you said, with low code, or whether it's, logic apps or anything else like that, you can actually take the data, translate it, use it now to get the information that I need. So it's progressing rather rapidly right now.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about the future. You mentioned it a couple of times, and AI has been mentioned. But Kevin, give us your thoughts on the future of logistics tech and the whole world of data sharing and some of the industry challenges, and how Splice is approaching those challenges.
Yeah. Well, from our perspective, we see this. I mentioned this gap earlier, and you could argue the gap's just getting wider, right? Look where we are now with the proliferation of AI, and that's only going to continue to grow against those legacy systems that we're still working with, how much farther advanced they are. So we're going to be continuously trying to bridge those gaps. And there's going to be things that are just going to happen that are in the works now, right? So data standardization is one that comes up for us a lot in the world of creating data interoperability. And I think in a business that is intrinsically horizontal with so many different verticals going across it, you're going to have a lot of different potential standards. You're going to have a lot of ways that people are going to want data to be formatted and used in order to suit those verticals. And I think at times those verticals will be paramount to the horizontal logistics function. So you'll still need ways to be able to translate and use that data in common ways. So that's where we think a tool like Splice has a lot of durability. I think the other aspect that I touched on is just the changing role of the logistics professional, right? So to not only understanding what is the process on how cargo moves, but what is the process on how the data moves with that cargo. And that sort of insight is going to be extremely valuable.
So
and
true.
It's kind of the game changer that,
that's a great point, Kevin.
That people who are really moving quickly through the industry and rising up, they get that. And they bring that element to their companies.
Yeah. And what data is important, because Kevin, KP and I just talked about this last night at an event, is like, we used to ask we need these 24 milestones, and we used 3 of them, and so finding, what is the right data. And, I have a partner on my business side, and he always asks what, and then so what. So what do you want? And then so what? What are you going to use for it? So when we look at a website or anything else like that, we have 2,560 feet of contiguous berth. Okay. So what? What does that mean? So translating that information into what is actually actionable or usable, right?
Yeah. Well, you might think of a lot of what we do in the business is exception management, right? So you might flip it a little bit and call it exception leadership. So when you start being able to identify, react, and then project a decision that people can coalesce on, and then collectively move that decision forward, that's kind of where we're headed. So it's being able to do all those things you just mentioned. It's quickly interpret what you're getting and understand the so what about it. There's that big conversation going on around visibility right now. So what 100%. Good is visibility if it's not getting to a place where it creates an action and a result.
In our shop we call those actionable insights, right? So what do I need to do right now?
That's right. I think that's where things are headed, is being able to know what those choices are. And maybe AI has a role in helping predetermine what the best option of the bunch is. So
for sure.
So Kevin, you've been in the industry for a while. So, with that comes the next question. So if there's one thing the industry could do better to accelerate digitization, in particular, what would that be? What would you say?
It's hard for me not to come back to some elements of data standardization, right?
Okay.
And as I mentioned, it doesn't need to be strict standards, but there have to be certain parameters that are being fulfilled. And I think that's where things are going. So I think that's a really smart thing that's happening across the industry. So I'm part of a board at Virginia Tech Transportation Institute that's working on this very, very problem. And what's really interesting is that there's the data element, there's the human element that they're bringing into this, and then there's advanced technologies, if that's EVs and other things that really drive things forward. But it's being able to have a framework that allows data to move more seamlessly, I think is one of the critical things that's going to be necessary to get, digitization to take hold. That's going to help lower the cost. It's going to help make it a little more universal, because we have a lot of diversity in the business. Mm-hmm. And despite the big mergers that are happening, if that's, DSV, Schenker, and other things, you still have a lot of diversity in the business. That's a great thing. That's a strength. But if we're going to be able to drive some universal efficiencies forward, you're going to need these these parameters that normalize some of the data.
That's good. That's good. So listen, how big is Splice? How many people do you have, and how many are on your team?
So we have a pretty small team still. So so we leverage partners that we've had for a long time to get a lot of work done. One of our partner groups is actually based in Ukraine, and they've been with us and with my co-founders for several years. And when the predating Splice, and when the war broke out, it was our decision to say, you know what, we're going to keep them on as much. If they can get online, then we'll keep working with them. And they're talk about innovation and ingenuity. They haven't missed a beat, and it's been it's a great partnership.
Well, the second part of that question was really going to be, how do you keep your team motivated and aligned on your core values? And that I didn't know that you had a team in Ukraine, but how do you answer that?
It comes with great communication and a laugh every once in a while when things because something's going to go wrong, just a matter of when, and it's all about what you do when those things happen. Yeah. And I think that's what leadership is about. It's going to hit the fan at some point. Yeah. So what do you do next?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a matter of when. I think in today's environment, we're very fortunate that we have the technology where we can actually, get face to face, whether that's through Teams or Zoom or anything else like that. And, you got project boards, whether it's Asana, Trello, Monday, anything else like that. So you can see statuses that are going on. But I think that's a great question, KP, around alignment and making sure that, the team is aligned around that common goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So if, during your career, is there one lesson? And I always know it's always hard to drill it down into one, but, that you've learned early in your career that stayed with you throughout your career, your journey?
One thing I learned early on at Procter & Gamble is that a great system, that's the people, the process, and the tools that you have with it. A great system frees you up to be creative. It should allow you to get the work that just got to get done. It's got to get done, right?
Love that.
And we all have it. It's not the fun part of the job, but that's what a system is for. And so I started learning early on that if you have a good system, you're going to free your mind, the mind space, the physically, the time, in order to be creative, innovative. And that's the moments when you move things to the next level.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
And I think that's good advice too on just the fear of implementing a system, any kind of system, because a lot of people feel like that if we do this, I'm going to, it's taking my job and things like that. It's like, no, that's not the purpose. It's actually, when we do this, it's going to free you up to do your job, right? It's actually going to make you more creative. It's going to allow you to look into what you actually need to do to progress your business and serve your customers and shareholders to a greater degree.
Yep. Agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kevin, I know you're an avid hiker, kayaker, what are outdoorsman, I'll call it. What do you enjoy most about doing those type activities? Where's your favorite spot? Where will we find you? If you're not in the office, where are you at?
Where are you going to find me? Well, a couple weeks ago, you'd find me with my friends from growing up in Minneapolis, in Colorado. So we try to meet up as much as we can, and we try to get off the grid.
Yeah.
So we've in the past tried to do some heroic hiking trips, and now we said, well, maybe heroism isn't in the cards as much as it used to be. So I got to go fly fishing for only the second time in my life a couple weeks ago, which was absolutely amazing.
Oh
Okay,
my
well,
gosh,
if you ever
in
come to
Colorado.
Arkansas, I can hook you up with somebody. I know someone really well. Kevin knows who I'm thinking of. That, and it's not you, Higgins, that can connect you up with some good fly fishing. I'm not a fly fisher, but I got a guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wasn't one either, but I'll tell you what, you don't have to look like Robert Redford and the river runs through it to I think that was him. Anyways,
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt, yeah.
And
exactly. It's really relaxing. There's just something to it. Just paying attention to getting that fly to drop and find that fish.
Yeah, I took it up. I did it first time last summer in Colorado in Breckenridge, and then I've got access to a fishing lodge out here. It's right on the White River, and so it's
don't tell them where. Don't tell them where.
Yeah, I'm not telling you where, but it is incredibly peaceful to go out there and just stand there in the middle of the river and do that. I don't care if I catch a fish or not.
I just had a great idea. We're going to do a podcast from there, Higgins.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, can I be a guest again?
Absolutely. Well,
absolutely.
Kevapalooza reunion
on site.
Yeah, there we go.
That's a great idea.
Great. Yeah, let's do it.
Great idea. Well, listen, Kevin, this has been really good. But one closing question or thought, I'd love to get your take on, maybe some of the biggest challenges, logistical challenges that you see in 2025. At the time that we're recording this, there's a lot of hot topics around tariffs. But outside of that, what do you see some of the biggest logistics challenges for the next 12 months?
Well, that would have been my top choice. It's certainly going to create for more disruptions.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see some really interesting things happen over the coming year. Just from a business standpoint, what's going to happen with Gemini, and how is that actually going to perform and deliver the results on the water that we thought were going to take place. We're seeing some incredible M&A that's taking place. If it's Kuehne+Nagel with IMC announced that 51% acquisition, we're going to see
it's probably time for this, right? It's probably, we've been building up to this, so this is probably a good time. That may be controversial to some, but I think it's a good time for that. So that's a really good one, Kevin.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, so outside of those exogenous effects of tariffs and things, I think there are some things inside the industry that are going to be really fascinating to watch. And I think how these consolidations of businesses, these mergers and integrations, how they take place, whether they're successful, whether other companies are able to take advantage of the inevitable slowdown that takes place when you bring in two companies. Things happen. They don't move as quickly, and sometimes people are able to take advantage of that. So there's a lot to keep your eye on in the year to come.
Well, with that, what's one thing you're most excited about for Splice's future?
Well, I think we've done some excellent work in building this platform, this solid Rosetta Stone that we're going to be able to leverage in more areas than just the two that we've kind of picked out so far, which is around the exports and yard management. We're doing more integrations with some trucking companies of different types, forwarders, shippers. So I'm really excited about the prospects. I think we've done very well for ourselves to lay the foundation for a lot of growth.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. We look forward to continuing to watch what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys again.
Yeah, this has been great, Kevin. We could probably go on, and glad we got you to come back and give you a lot more time, to really highlight Splice and you and your career. So thanks for being a part of that. So that's a wrap for today's episode of Kev Talks Real World Global Logistics. A huge thank you to Kevin Speers for joining us and sharing some insightful perspectives on the power of connection and automation in supply chain management. It's clear that Splice is at the forefront of transforming how logistics integrates and operates.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay connected with us for more real-world insights and inspiring conversations. And as always, keep the logistics world moving forward. Until next time on Kev Talks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. If today's discussion inspired you, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and share our podcast.
Remember, every great journey in logistics starts with a single step forward. Let's continue working together to transform the industry.